Let's look at the SEC schedule this year. Let's talk about some of the biggest conference games, not out-of-conference games. Tennessee at Bama is where it starts for me. That's in Week 8. Like last year, Director Colin was there, so everyone was there in Neyland Stadium when Tennessee took down Bama for the first time in a decade and a half. Used to be a huge rivalry, and it can be again, but hey, if you were college age, you didn't know because you've just known Bama domination. And then all of a sudden you saw what that rivalry actually meant because you saw the other team win it. And I had been talking to you guys all week about if Tennessee wins it, you're going to see something like you've never seen before. Well, Tennessee won it. And you saw a scene like you've never seen before. The scene in Neyland Stadium after they beat Alabama topped any scene I've ever seen at a national championship game, which makes no sense to anyone in any other sport. But that's college football. Saturdays in the fall, that's college football. The third Saturday in October in particular is the name of this rivalry. And they played in Tuscaloosa this year. I've been to many a Tennessee-Alabama game, both venues, but it's been a long time since I've been to a Tennessee-Bama game where the Bama crowd actually feared losing. They'll feel that this year, which adds the juice to the rivalry that, quite frankly, it had lacked over the past few years. That alone is reason enough for me to put this game as one of, if not the biggest circles on the SEC schedule of games I'm looking forward to. I'm going to go with a really random game next, and it's the week before Bama plays Tennessee. Week 7, little off the radar here. Florida at South Carolina. I told you it's a little off the radar, but you got to think about what I care about, okay? So you may value different things. You may just load it up with a bunch of Bama and Georgia, which is fine. I care about this game because I know the boat that both of those staffs are in. So Shane Beamer has overachieved 2 years in a row. Billy Napier badly needs something to sell to his fan base this year. South Carolina will have already played a pretty meaty schedule. They will have already played North Carolina. They will have already gone to Georgia and to Tennessee, but they'll be coming off a bye week here. Florida will not. And so whatever the best version, the most battle-tested best version of South Carolina is, will probably get it here. And they get to host Florida in this game too. Florida, on the other hand, for all the consternation around this program and for all the lack of hope around this team this year, they don't have a murderer's row of a schedule to start out, guys. They go to Utah to start week 1, but then they also have McNeese, they got Charlotte, they got Kentucky and Vandy early in the year. They do have Tennessee there, but there's a chance, especially if they pull one upset, there's a chance that Florida either is just, they could just be better than we thought. They could also be a little inflated. So there are a couple of different scenarios. Now, third is they could just have imploded already. But there's this first and second scenario that makes this game all of a sudden really, really attractive. And look, either way, man, if Billy Napier wins that game or he loses that game, if he wins the game, he goes into the bye happy, and then they've got the Georgia game, and all of a sudden we get a little hype behind that one. But if they lose it, yeah, you got the South Carolina storyline, but also it would be very sour in Gainesville very quickly. Georgia at Tennessee. I cannot get too far down this list before I talk about this game. It's in week 12. I got a stat for you. I put it on Twitter earlier today. Just even within conferences to show you some of the scheduling, not scheduling imbalance, the division imbalance. This is no fault of Georgia, by the way. Georgia plays one team all year with a preseason win total of over 7, and that's Tennessee. Bama, conversely, plays 4 of the top 13 teams in the country in terms of title odds, national title odds. They play in the same conference. It's just crazy what side of the Chattahoochee River and which division you play in and how different that makes things for you. So this game is Georgia's season. They get to build up to it all year. It should be the only time that they're threatened by an opponent that could beat them if they play their B-plus game. Any other team that beats Georgia will need Georgia's help. Tennessee, there is a path, especially in Neyland Stadium, where Georgia brings it and Tennessee still finds a way to win the game. Think the Bama game last year with Tennessee. Can you replicate that? Is this that game this year where Tennessee bottles up what we saw against Bama last year? Home field, plus Georgia starting a new quarterback, presumably Carson Beck. Could be fun. We were at this game last year, and I know the final was 27-13. Not nearly that close. Just the style that Georgia played, not nearly that close. What about LSU at Alabama? Have you heard that LSU beat Bama last year? You guys heard that? I heard they did. And then I confirmed it. Yeah, they did. These both, they're always rested, so they always have a bye week before this game. Brian Kelly versus Nick Saban is rapidly increasing in terms of the profile on that matchup, as it should. And also, outside of just the SEC, these are two of the top 5 teams in the country in terms of preseason title odds. So what that game was for a long time, and then it got lost for a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden last year, you see the upset happen. Maybe we get the classical LSU-Bama feel back to that rivalry again this year. Again, to win the SEC this year, the odds go Georgia, Bama, LSU. Texas A&M still has better odds than Tennessee, by the way. I know that stuns a lot of you. I just had a really violent hiccup. So that's another one. I got another random one to throw at you. So I thought Florida at South Carolina was pretty random. Also in Week 8, that's when Ole Miss goes to Auburn. And for those of you who just showed up, lest we forget, Ole Miss's head coach Lane Kiffin about took the Auburn job. He probably decided to and then backed away last minute. Now they've got Hugh Freeze there, all's well that ends well. But that's one reason to watch this. The other reason it's a critical division game. Auburn's offense in Week 1, who's to say what it looks like? But this is Week 8. So by Week 8, we'll know. On both sides, really. We'll know what those offenses look like. And also, these two teams each had top 10 transfer portal classes. And Auburn has continued to rack up. I think they're top 5 at this point. So this is that time of year where it gets really dangerous because you started to formulate your opinions and your predictions. And the reality is there are a lot of players you've never seen play for these teams that are going to be big-time contributors, and they will ultimately decide how good these teams are this fall. But Ole Miss at Auburn, the whole Kiffin versus Hugh Freeze thing, Hugh Freeze, his former team in Ole Miss, that'll be really good. And a couple more, really just one. I have to always go to this one. Texas A&M at Arkansas, or Texas A&M versus Arkansas. So when I picture this game in my head, I always picture that neither of them has played anyone. I always picture it as the first big game. But that's never true. I don't know why my mind works that way. So this year, for example, it's Week 5 when the game happens. Arkansas will have already played Brigham Young and at LSU. A&M will have already played at Miami and versus Auburn. So they could be undefeated and rolling. Both of them could have a loss. Both of them could have 2 losses. Could be some mixed bag of that, mismatch of that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But here's the other thing. Until further notice, just assume every A&M game is going to be close, like this one was last year. This is the one, I think, where we had the bounce off the upright and Arkansas loses, and then their season goes into a tailspin. But as much attention as will be paid on A&M, let's also remember, hey, Arkansas didn't have things go the way they wanted to either last year. And we've got to look at the portal additions they've made. Welcome to town, Varkey's Gums, for the second time. KJ Jefferson did not go anywhere. He's still the quarterback there. They've made some solid additions portal-wise on their defense. Always an entertaining game. They call it the Southwest Classic for a reason. I'm not crazy about the venue, but it is what it is. So those are some of the spotlight games I have my eye on in the SEC this year.